We're looking at 9 values. So when I'm looking at this, I have the absolute value of x equals 5. What number could we put in place of x that would give us the answer of 5? What number, if we take its absolute value, will we get the answer of 5? There's actually two numbers. So let's see what happens if we say, what if x equals 5? So we're going to plug it in, the absolute value of x. So the absolute value of 5 is 5. So 5 is one of my two answers. The other answer, let's see what happens if I use negative 5. So the absolute value of negative 5 equals 5. So it does work. Let's look at this one though. If I'm looking for the absolute value of x plus 3 and I want it to equal 8, what I want to think about is, over in this problem that we just did, we wanted x to be 5. So we said, how could x be 5? X could be 5 here if I used 5 or negative 5. In order for this to equal 8, what's inside this absolute value has to be 8, or it could be negative 8. So if I could get an 8 in here, I get the answer of 8. If I could get a negative 8 in here, I get an answer of 8. So here's what we do. We say x plus 3 then needs to equal 8, or x plus 3 needs to equal negative 8. So those are my two thinking. If I can get in here the 8 or the negative 8, then I get what I'm looking for. So now I'm just doing basic solving. It's x plus 3. The opposite is subtracting the 3. This gives me the 0, and I move the x down, and I move the equal down, and 8 minus 3 is 5. So on this side, same thing, solving, opposite operations. It's positive 3, so we're going to subtract a 3 from both sides. This gives you a 0, left with just the x on this side. Negative 8 and negative 3 is negative 11, excuse me. And so now we're going to go ahead, and we think that those are our answers. We're going to just check it and see that it works. So I'm going to take the original problem here. The absolute value of x plus 3 equals 8. And I'm going to plug the 5 in. So the absolute value of 5 plus 3 equals 8. So 5 plus 3 is 8, and the absolute value of 8 is 8. So 5 did work. Now let's go ahead and try negative 11. So the absolute value of x plus 3 has to equal 8. And we want to know what happens if I make the x a negative 11. So negative 11 plus 3, does it equal 8? And negative 11 plus 3 is negative 8, and the absolute value of negative 8 is 8. So my answer of 5 and negative 11 are correct. Okay, so now this one's a little more difficult. We know that what's inside of here, we want it to equal 7 or negative 7, because if there's a 7 in here, we get the answer of 7. If there's a negative 7 in here, we get the answer of 7. So what we're going to do is now we're going to take that inside part and we're going to say, well, I want it to be 7. And then I want to know, what does it look like if it's negative 7? So now, again, solving equations. We've been doing this all year long now. First thing, we're looking at addition and subtraction, because we don't have any like terms to collect or get the variables on the same side. None of that. Just start moving and getting the x by itself. So negative 9, the opposite would be positive 9. I get 4x equals 16. I need opposite operations again. 4 times x, 4 divided. So x equals 4. So I think one of my answers is 4. Now we're going to come over here, same thing, solving, add the 9 to both sides. Here, that gives me my 0, and I'm left with 4x equals 2. And if I divide both sides, because it's an opposite, I get x equals, well, 2 divided by 4. I can divide, that's going to stay a fraction. I can simplify it, though, because I can divide this by 2 and this by 2. So 2 divided by 2 is 1. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So I think my answers are 4 and 1/2. So now what we're going to do is we're going to check our answer and make sure that it does give us the right answer. So the absolute value of 4x minus 9 equals 7. Plug in the 4. The absolute value of 4 times 4 minus 9 equals 7. So I get 16, pardon me, the absolute value of 16 minus 9. And 16 minus 9 is 7. So the absolute value of 7 is 7. So that one worked. Let's try over here the absolute value of 4x minus 9 equals 7 when we use 1/2. And even though it's a fraction, it actually works out really nice right about here because it's going to disappear in about 30 seconds. So 4 times 1/2 is the same thing as taking half of 4. If you can't see that, then make it both of them into a fraction. You multiply the top and you multiply the bottom. So 4 times 1 is 4. 2 times 1 is 2 minus 9. 4 divided by 2 is 2 minus 9. And then here I get 2 minus 9. The one's positive, one's negative. We subtract. I get negative 7 is the absolute value. And does negative 7's absolute value equal 7? Yes. So my answers, both of them work. All right, so now this time we have an added part to what we were doing. So before, when we were looking at this, we had just the absolute value on the left side. So the absolute value of x, absolute value of x plus 3, the absolute value of 4x plus 9. We've added this extra part here. We now have an addition here. And I want you to think of it like solving an equation. We want to get the absolute value by itself. So get absolute value by itself. So now, opposite operations, just like solving equations. It's an adding of a 4, so I'm going to subtract the 4. 0 is what I get here, and 0 plus this would be the absolute value of 3y minus 2 equals 21 minus 4, which is 17. Okay, so now, again, we know that if we can put inside of these absolute values the answer of 17 or negative 17, we would get what we wanted. So the absolute value of 17 is 17. The absolute value of negative 17 is 17. So we're going to take 3y minus 2 and make it equal to 17, and 3y minus 2 and make it equal to negative 17. Now, with that being done, let's go ahead and solve the equation. Remember, doing opposite operations. We have no like terms to collect, no variables to get on the same side. Our next step is adding and subtracting. This is a negative 2, so I'm going to add a 2 to both sides. This gives me a 0. 3y equals 17 plus 2 is 9. Opposite operations, division. 3 times y, opposite is division. 3 divided by 3 is 1. Y equals, and there's nothing to be done here. I can't do much there, so I'm just going to leave it as a fraction. It's all right. So on this side, we're going to try it again. It's minus 2. I'm going to add 2. Over here, you get your 0 plus the 3y, so 3y equals negative 17 plus 2 is the negative 15. Now, opposite operations, it's multiplying by 3. I'm going to divide by 3. Y equals negative 5. So right now, that's what I think my answers are. 19 thirds and negative 15. So I'm going to go ahead and plug this in and see if it does work. So the equation is the absolute value of 3y minus 2 plus 4 equals 21. I'm going to write it twice because I have two answers to check. And first I'm going to try the 5 because I know that you guys don't like the fraction. So first we're going to try with the plain 5. 3 times negative 5, which is negative 15, minus 2, when you're doing order of operations, you can kind of treat your absolute value like a parentheses. So we want to do its inside absolute value and finish it off before we go any further, because we can. Where before we couldn't do anything here because 3y minus 2 you can't do anything with. So we had to find a different way. But I can do negative 15 and negative 2, which is negative 17. And the absolute value of negative 17 is 17. And I get 21 equals 21. All right, so now we're going to try it with the fraction, and it's actually, again, going to dissolve that fraction right off the bat. So changing y to 19 thirds. So again, draw our mirror. We want to get rid of, think about your order of operations. Do what's inside, and again, treat your absolute values like parentheses. Here, you still have absolute value. You multiply. You can multiply 3 times 19, or you can see that 3 divided by 3 is 1. So you're left with 19 over 1, which is 19. Finish off what's in here. So I get 17 absolute value. And I know that the absolute value of 17 is 17 plus 4. And I do get 17 plus 4 is 21. So both of my answers worked. So these two answers are the right answers. Okay. When you're looking at this equation, you need to stop and think about it for a minute. So it says the absolute value of 5x minus 3 equals negative 17. Is there any way that that answer could be true? Think about it for a moment. If I take the absolute value of a number that's in here, so let's say I put the absolute value of negative 17. The absolute value of negative 17 would never equal a negative number. The absolute value of anything you put here is going to give you a positive on this side. So because no matter what you put here, it's not 0, it's the null set. There is no answer for that problem. We can't put anything in for x and end up with a negative 17. The absolute value of every number in the world is a positive number. And so that problem would be over. 8 minus the absolute value of 1 minus y equals 7. So again, we want to get the absolute value by itself, just like you would get a variable by itself. So we need to get rid of this 8. It's a subtraction problem, but the 8 itself is actually positive. So the opposite of a positive 8 would be a negative 8. And again, you do it on both sides of your mirror. This gives us the 0. We're left with negative the absolute value of 1 minus y. And over here we get negative 1. So now what we want to do is we want to get rid of this negative. And remember, even though it looks like it's just a negative, it's always negative 1. I can divide both sides by negative 1, or I can multiply both sides by negative 1. If I divide by negative 1, over here negative 1 divided by negative 1 goes away, and I'm left with 1 minus y. Inside the absolute value, negative 1 divided by negative 1 is 1. Again, knowing what I've seen already, if I had a 1 in here or a negative 1 in here, I'm going to get the absolute value to equal 1. So I do 1 minus y equals 1. 1 minus y equals negative 1. And now I solve for y. It's a positive 1. I subtract it from both sides. This gives me a 0. Negative y equals 0. And if I multiply both sides by a negative 1, here a negative times a negative is a positive. Y times 1 is 1, or is y. 0 times anything is 0. So my first answer is 0. Okay, again, I'm going to get the y by itself, 1, and I'm going to subtract that 1 from both sides. This equals the 0. I get negative y on this side. Negative 1 and negative 1 makes negative 2. Multiply by the negative 1. Again, a negative times a negative is a positive. 1 times y is y. Negative times a negative is a positive. 2 times 1 is 2. So I have the answers of 0 and 2. So now I'm going to check it, make sure it works. Write down the original problem. 8 minus 1 minus y equals 7. 8 minus the absolute value of 1 minus y equals 7. Or excuse me, equals 7. And we're going to see, sorry about that. So now we're going to see if we plug in the 0, if it works, and the 2. So we're going to plug in the 0 first. 8 minus 1 minus 0. Again, it's keeping everything on its side. 1 minus 0 is 1, and the absolute value of 1 is 1, and 8 minus 1 is 7. Over here, we're going to plug in that y again, and we're using 2. Keep everything on their side. We want 7 on this side for it to be right. 8 minus negative 1 inside the absolute value. The absolute value of negative 1, now understand this negative has nothing to do with it. We move it down. Absolute value of negative 1 is 1, and 8 minus 1 is 7. So both 0 and 2 worked. Now at this point, if you think you've got a pretty good handle on it, then go ahead and stop the video. Try a couple problems on your own. And then if you're still struggling, I'm going to do a few more problems on the video. And if you are doing okay, then you don't have to watch the rest of the video. So now we're going to do a couple more like we had at the very beginning. And once you feel comfortable, you can stop the video at any point. So again, we're looking at, well, and we don't need a mirror, I'm apologizing there. We know that whatever's inside here has to equal 6. So it has to be 6 or negative 6 because the absolute value of 6 is 6 and the absolute value of negative 6 is 6. So x plus 8 equals 6 and x plus 8 equals negative 6. Solving, adding an 8, the opposite would be subtracting the 8. So x equals negative 2. If we subtract the 8 from both sides, again keeping our mirror there, this gives us 0. X equals negative 6 and negative 8. We add them and they both stay negative for a negative 14. Now we have two answers. We want to see if they actually work. So we're going to plug them in here. X plus 8 equals 6. I have negative 2 plus 8, absolute value, equals 6. Negative 2 plus 8 is 6, and the absolute value of 6 is 6. Running out of room there. If I have the absolute value of x plus 8 equals 6, I plug in 14. Negative 14 plus 8 equals 6. Here we're looking at negative 14 and positive 8. We would subtract them, and it's negative 6 because 14 is bigger than 8. And that's true. The absolute value of negative 6 is 6. So my answer is negative 2 and negative 14. Let's try another one. Again, we're looking at 2x minus 4 equals 10, and 2x minus 4 equals negative 10. Again, remember, if we want 10 as the answer, whatever's inside here has to be 10 or negative 10. So again, solving the equation, add the 4 to both sides. This is 0. 2x equals 10 plus 4 is 14. Divide by 2. X equals 7. Over here, add the 4 to both sides. This equals 0. So we get 2x equals negative 6. Divide by 2. X equals negative 3. When I do the check, I'm looking for the absolute value of 2x minus 4 equals 10. Plug in my 7. 2 times 7 minus 4. 2 times 7 is 14 minus 4. And that gives me the absolute value of 10 is 10. Got it. Over here, the absolute value of 2x minus 4 equals 10. Plug in negative 3. So 2 times negative 3 minus 4, equals 10. 2 times negative 3 is negative 6 minus 4. And a negative 6 and a negative 4 would make a negative 10, which the absolute value of negative 10 would equal 10. So my answer is negative 3 and 7. So first, let's do this one. Again, we want the absolute value all by itself. Add that 9 to both sides. Here we get our 0 we were hoping for. The absolute value of 2x plus 5 equals 9 and 12 would be 21. So now we have the absolute value by itself. Now we work on the solving. Whatever goes in here has to equal 21. So 2x plus 5 equals 21, or 2x plus 5 equals negative 21, because we'll get that if we take the absolute value. Solving that equation, remember, collect like terms, nothing there. Variable on the same side, nothing there. Now we add and subtract. Positive 5 becomes negative 5. 5 minus 5 is the 0 we were hoping for. So 2x equals 16. Divide is the opposite operation. X equals 8. So we think one of our answers is 8. Over here, solving, get the 5 off of there. So subtract the 5 from both sides. This is a 0. 2x equals negative 21 and negative 5. They're both negative. You add them together and they stay negative. Negative 26. Divide by 2. So x equals negative 13. So I think those answers are right. I'm going to plug them in and check them just to see that they do actually work. So the absolute value of 2x plus 5 minus 9 equals 12. X is 8. 2 times x plus 5 minus 9 equals 12. So 16 plus 5 gives us the next part. And so 16 plus 5 gives us 21. And the absolute value of 21 is 21. And 21 minus 9 is actually 12. We come over on the side. I'm going to do the check over here. 2x plus 5 minus 9 equals 12. We're looking at negative 13. So 2 times negative 13 plus 5, absolute value, and that is actually minus 9, not plus 9. Minus 9 equals 12. Take the absolute value. 2 times negative 13 is negative 26 plus 5. Minus 9 equals 12. The absolute value of negative 26 and positive 5, we put those together and we get negative 21, starting to look good. Absolute value of negative 21 is 21 minus 9, and that equals 12. Okay, we're going to do one last problem. So we're looking here at this problem again. We need to get the absolute value by itself. So we're going to get rid of this 8. It's a positive 8, and it's an addition problem. So the opposite of a positive 8 is a negative 8. Opposite operations every time. 8 minus 8 gives me the 0 plus the absolute value of 2c minus 1 equals the absolute value of 2c minus 1. 4 minus 8 is negative 4. Again, now I'm down to absolute value by itself, so I did what I wanted. Whatever goes in here has got to equal negative 4. Well, remember back, we can't have a negative number. The absolute value of anything is going to be positive. So it doesn't matter what I put in here, I'm not going to get negative 4 as an answer. So C is non-existent. It's the null set. It's not 0. It's just not there. There's no solution. Or you can put that. So no solution.